Welcome back to the channel. If you're someone who loves stories that mix history, mystery, and mind-blowing discoveries, you're in for an absolute treat today. Because what if I told you that a tiny copper coin from 1967, yes, a 1-cent piece, ended up being worth more than some of the most expensive real estate in the world? That's right, today we're diving into the incredible, almost unbelievable story of the 1967 1-cent coin that shocked the entire numismatic world when it was valued at a staggering $357 million. But how did it happen? How can a single coin carry a price tag like that? Buckle up, because this tale winds through government secrets, forgotten safes, collectors' obsessions, and one man's chance discovery that would change his life and history forever. It all started not with the coin itself, but with a retired janitor named Harold Benson. Harold lived a quiet, uneventful life in a small town in Vermont. He wasn't wealthy, he wasn't famous, and he certainly wasn't someone who would expect to one day be the owner of the most expensive penny in history. But Harold had a habit. Not a bad one, mind you. His habit was simply collecting loose change. Ever since he was a child, Harold had an old wooden box he kept under his bed, filled with coins he found on sidewalks, in vending machine returns, and even some he traded for at yard sales. Fast forward to 2019, Harold was in his late 70s, living alone after his wife passed away, and beginning to consider what to do with all the junk he'd accumulated over the decades. One rainy afternoon, he pulled the box out and began sorting through it. Most of the coins were ordinary, worn, and not worth more than their face value. But one coin immediately caught his attention. It was a 1967 1-cent coin, Lincoln's profile on the front, like any regular penny. But something about it felt different. It was heavier. The copper tone had a richer, more golden hue. And when he flipped it over, instead of the familiar Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse, he saw something strange. Instead of the memorial, the coin bore a detailed engraving of what looked like an eagle perched on a globe. It was unlike anything Harold had ever seen before. Now, Harold wasn't a coin expert, but he was curious enough to do some research. He went online and joined a few numismatic forums. He posted a blurry picture of the coin and asked if anyone knew what it was. Most users dismissed it as a fake or some novelty token. But then came a message from someone using the username PennySeeker1943. The user wrote, "Delete this post. You may have something very rare. I'll message you privately." At first, Harold was skeptical. The internet was full of scammers, and he didn't want to get involved with anything shady. But curiosity got the better of him. When he opened the private message, the user had attached a series of articles, old, archived government documents, and photographs of minting prototypes. According to the user, the U.S. Mint in 1967 had planned a special series of pennies to commemorate a proposed global unity initiative during the height of the Cold War. These coins were designed with the eagle on globe symbol, intended to represent peace and strength. The initiative was scrapped within months due to political backlash, and all prototype coins were supposed to have been destroyed. Official records indicated that only 6 of them had been made, and all 6 were reported to have been melted down. But here in Harold's palm was one that had somehow escaped that fate. It was, potentially, the only one left in existence. But if that was true, it begged a bigger question: how had it survived? How had it ended up in a janitor's box of spare change? The answer to that question would lead Harold down a rabbit hole involving an ex-Mint employee, a hidden diary, a family feud, and a mystery locked away for over 50 years. Harold decided to seek professional help. He contacted a well-known numismatist based in New York, Dr. Lila Monroe, a retired professor of American numismatic history. Lila was skeptical at first, as many rare coin claims often ended in disappointment. But when Harold showed her the coin in person, her reaction was immediate. Her hands trembled slightly as she held it up to the light, examining the engraving, the weight, the luster. "This," she whispered, "shouldn't exist." She ran a battery of tests: metal composition, die alignment, strike depth. Everything about the coin was authentic. Not a novelty piece. Not a replica. This was, by all accounts, a mint state coin made in 1967 with the special commemorative reverse. The composition of the metal was especially unique, a copper-zinc alloy that was tested briefly at the time for durability but never used in circulation. That alloy was registered only for one batch of experimental coins in May of 1967. With this information, Lila began digging into mint records and archived employee logs from that time. What she found shocked her even more. There had been a single employee who'd worked at the mint during the brief production window, an engraver named Charles Wayland. Wayland had a spotless record and was known for his precision and loyalty. But in his final year at the mint, there was an odd note in his file. Suspicious behavior during prototype coin destruction. No evidence found. Case closed. Digging further, Lila discovered that Charles Wayland had passed away in 1972 under mysterious circumstances. He had no children, but he did leave behind a brother, Walter Wayland, who had moved to Vermont shortly after Charles's death. And Harold? He had purchased his house in the early 80s, from the estate of Walter Wayland. That's when it all began to make sense. Somehow, Charles had smuggled out one of the prototype coins. Knowing it was too dangerous to keep, he may have given it to his brother Walter for safekeeping. After Walter's death, his belongings, some of which included a jar of coins, were sold off with the house. And Harold, unknowingly, had kept that coin hidden away for decades. But now, it was no longer hidden. Word started to spread in the numismatic world. First among serious collectors, then in the media. Soon, Harold's quiet life was interrupted by reporters, treasure hunters, and even offers from private collectors willing to pay over $100 million for the coin. But Harold wasn't interested in a quick sale. He wanted answers. He wanted the full story. And Lila agreed. They approached the Smithsonian, where a team of coin historians and curators helped authenticate the coin further. It was declared a numismatic artifact of historical relevance, and confirmed to be the only known surviving piece from the aborted 1967 Unity Penny Project. That's when the bidding war began. Wealthy collectors from around the world made their offers, each higher than the last. Tech billionaires, hedge fund managers, royalty from the Middle East. Even a museum in Tokyo placed a bid. But one man, a reclusive European industrialist named Adrien Leclerc, shocked the world when he offered $357 million for the coin, claiming it would complete his monetary evolution collection, a private vault of every major turning point in global currency. After weeks of deliberation, Harold accepted the offer, but on one condition: the coin must be displayed to the public once a year on July 4th, in the National Museum of American History. Leclerc agreed, and just like that, Harold Benson, a retired janitor from Vermont, became one of the wealthiest men in America, all because of a coin he'd forgotten he even had. But the story doesn't end there. In the months following the sale, more strange details began to emerge. A former Mint employee came forward with a journal he had kept during the late 60s, mentioning the Eagle Penny project and describing a heated argument between Charles Wayland and a top Mint official. According to the journal, Charles had been vehemently opposed to destroying the coins, believing they represented the best of what America could become. The journal also hinted at a second coin that may have been smuggled out, a coin Charles referred to cryptically as the twin. That set off a whole new wave of treasure hunters scouring estates, flea markets, and private collections in search of another Eagle Penny. To date, no second coin has been found, but that hasn't stopped the speculation or the frenzy in the numismatic community. Today, the 1967 1-cent coin that sold for $357 million is considered one of the greatest accidental finds in modern history. Not just for its value, but for what it represents: the intersection of passion, secrecy, idealism, and sheer luck. It proved that history can hide in the most ordinary places. That sometimes the rarest treasure might just be sitting in a dusty box beneath your bed. And Harold? He donated part of his fortune to coin education programs, established a scholarship for aspiring historians, and spent the rest of his days in a lakeside home, living simply, always wearing the same worn-out flannel shirt and occasionally giving talks about his story, never forgetting where he came from. So, the next time you find an old penny in your couch cushion, think twice before tossing it aside. Because you never know, it might just be the next 1967 1-cent coin. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this incredible true story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more mind-blowing coin discoveries, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload. See you in the next one. Last, we're diving deep into the fascinating tale of a 2013 1-cent coin that somehow, against all odds, ended up being worth a jaw-dropping $24 million. That's right. One little copper coin, the kind you might find hiding in couch cushions or wedged under your car seat, turned out to be a treasure of historic proportions. And the story of how it got there is just as wild as the number attached to it. It all started in a small town just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. A man named Marcus Lane, a former machinist who had retired early due to an injury on the job, had developed a quiet hobby of collecting coins. He wasn't one of those people with display cases and cataloged books. No, Marcus was more of an accidental collector. He simply liked the idea of keeping coins that looked a little off. Maybe the color was different, maybe the edge was thicker, maybe the year seemed odd. Whatever the reason, he'd toss it in a metal box in his garage. He'd been doing this since the early 90s, and by 2015, he had accumulated thousands of coins in that box. One rainy afternoon, while reorganizing his garage, Marcus decided to take a closer look at the collection he'd ignored for years. He poured the contents of the box onto a large wooden table and started inspecting the coins one by one. Most were ordinary. Some had minor scratches or discoloration. Others were foreign coins mixed in by mistake. But one coin, just one, stuck out. A 2013 1-cent coin. At first glance, it looked just like any other penny. But when Marcus held it under a small magnifying lamp, he noticed something was off. The detail on Lincoln's face was sharper than normal. The coloration was slightly richer, a mix between traditional copper and a soft gold hue. And the edge, it didn't feel right. It was slightly beveled, and smoother than any penny he'd handled before. Curious, Marcus decided to do a bit of research. He compared the coin to several others from the same year, and quickly noticed clear differences. Not only was the font on the "In God We Trust" motto slightly different, but the coin's weight was also just a bit heavier. Not by much, less than a gram, but enough for someone with experience handling metal tools to notice. He dug out his old digital scale from the garage and confirmed the discrepancy. While a regular 2013 penny weighs about 2.5 grams, his weighed 3.1. That small difference became the catalyst for what would eventually unfold into one of the most incredible coin discoveries of the 21st century. Marcus took the coin to a local coin dealer, someone he'd sold a few silver dollars to years ago. The dealer, a man named Peter Caldwell, initially brushed it off. "A 2013 penny?" he laughed. "Come on, Marcus. That's not even old." But Marcus insisted. Reluctantly, Peter took a closer look. Within minutes, his entire demeanor shifted. He pulled out a jeweler's loupe, then a microscope, then a reference book on modern mintage errors. He asked Marcus to leave the coin with him overnight. Marcus, skeptical but trusting, agreed. The next morning, Peter called Marcus and told him they needed to talk. Not only was the coin unusual, but it was possibly a never-before-documented error coin. Peter had sent images and measurements to a contact of his at the American Numismatic Association. Within 48 hours, the phone calls started pouring in. Experts from all over the country wanted to examine the coin. It was speculated that it might be a rare prototype, a test strike coin made from a unique alloy blend, accidentally released into circulation. These types of coins aren't supposed to exist outside the walls of the U.S. Mint. But mistakes happen. Coins meant only for internal review or materials testing sometimes get mixed into production batches. If even one prototype coin escapes, and it's not caught by quality control, it can end up in someone's pocket. That's exactly what seemed to have happened here. As word spread, major collectors and museums began offering to authenticate the coin. Marcus, realizing he might be sitting on something truly significant, decided to consult with a lawyer. He didn't want to sell it prematurely or expose himself to any legal issues. His attorney helped him arrange an independent evaluation, and the coin was eventually submitted to the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation for official grading and authentication. It was during this process that the full truth began to emerge. The coin was, in fact, a test strike. A prototype minted with a highly experimental composition that included traces of manganese and zinc in a copper base, similar to materials used in foreign currency, not U.S. coins. Even more remarkably, the detail on the coin suggested that it had been pressed using a high-pressure experimental die intended for a future redesign of the penny, one that had never actually gone into production. Essentially, the coin was the ghost of a plan that never happened, a glimpse into what could have been a new era of American currency. Only one such coin was ever confirmed to exist. And it was in Marcus Lane's garage. The revelation shocked the numismatic community. Offers began flooding in. At first, $100,000. Then $500,000. A few weeks later, an anonymous collector in Dubai offered $3 million. But Marcus held out. He wasn't greedy, he was just overwhelmed. He had no idea how to navigate a multi-million-dollar auction or what the coin was truly worth. After weeks of negotiation, he agreed to put the coin up for public auction through Heritage Auctions, one of the most prestigious houses in the world for rare collectibles. The auction was scheduled for May 2016. Leading up to it, the buzz was massive. Media outlets ran stories. The coin was dubbed the Ghost Penny. Experts predicted it would fetch anywhere from $5 to $10 million, depending on the intensity of bidding. But no one was prepared for what actually happened. The night of the auction, bidders from over 30 countries logged in. The coin started at $100,000, and within seconds, shot past the $1 million mark. At the 20-minute mark, it had already hit $15 million. The final moments were nothing short of cinematic. Two collectors, one from Japan and one from New York, battled it out in $500,000 increments. When the gavel finally dropped, the price was an unprecedented $24 million. Marcus Lane, a retired machinist who had never made more than $42,000 in a year, had just become a multimillionaire because he picked up a coin that most people would have ignored. But the story didn't end there. In the years that followed, the Ghost Penny became one of the most famous coins in modern history. It was featured in documentaries, displayed in museum exhibits, and even became the subject of a limited-run graphic novel. Collectors began frantically searching for other unusual 2013 pennies, hoping lightning would strike twice. But no other coin with the same characteristics was ever found. The U.S. Mint refused to comment directly on the coin, only releasing a statement that read, "We are aware of reports regarding a unique 2013 1-cent coin. The Mint maintains strict control procedures. However, we cannot confirm or deny the existence of test strikes that may have been inadvertently released." Which only fueled the mystery more. As for Marcus, he invested wisely. He didn't go wild with his money. He bought a modest home closer to the mountains, donated to a local community center, and set up a scholarship fund at a nearby college for students pursuing industrial arts. When asked in an interview what he thought made that penny worth so much, he simply said, "I don't think it was the metal. I think it was the story." And maybe he was right, because sometimes it's not just about the material or the rarity. Sometimes it's about the journey, the accident, the mystery, the human being behind the discovery. The world is full of small, forgotten things, things we pass over, toss aside, deem worthless. But occasionally, those things carry stories that change lives. So next time you see a penny on the ground, pick it up. Flip it over. Look a little closer. Because you never know. You just might be holding history in the palm of your hand. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this incredible story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on more amazing stories like this one. See you next time.